everyone, and welcome to our discussion on virtual events and how they are morphing into hybrid events now. And thank you for tuning in to today's virtual event. I'm Aditi, and with me there's Sid. Sid is the CEO of Web Spiders, and Web Spiders owns E2M On Air. That's the global leader in virtual event technology. So, Sid, welcome on the show. And I would keep firing my questions. And thanks so much for joining in today.
Thank you, Aditi. Thanks a lot. Look forward to this.
Great. So the immediate question, Sid, right on your screen. So we are about 7 months into the global change, and what's the status with virtual events? What's happening?
Okay, great. Just to give a refresher, way back in, I think April, virtual was always there as a format, as an exclusive sort of format for certain kinds of events. And I think April sort of made all marketers, event planners, businesses, non-profits who are trying to raise funds and so on, decide, okay, what's going to happen. So April was more of wait and watch. I think May is when you really started seeing the adoption, when you really started seeing that, okay, people started getting projections that, okay, things are not going back normal anytime soon. And sort of May took it forward. And I think that momentum has been going on accelerating every month since then. And now today, we've just finished, we are finishing on the September mark now. We've entered October. And so you can see that the momentum is really picked up. In fact, to the point that people are now discussing what's going to happen next year. So I think it's no longer, I think all the naysayers who were thinking, no, virtual events is not for me, I think they're pretty much on board. And we are seeing that with our clients, and we are seeing that with the industry as well. And now is the point where people are saying, okay, what do I do in 2021? And what do I do in the next 5 years leading up to 2025? So what's my 5-year roadmap as well?
Interesting. So, as an obvious follow-up, do you see any exceptions, Sid, to the broad-based acceptance of virtual events? I mean, how are customers taking it? Is there any exceptions to how they're accepting it, or is it, almost the same behavioral pattern that you see across the globe?
So, yeah, it also depends, Aditi, on the kind of event, right? So, I think we've really seen very rapid adoption from technology companies. We've seen rapid adoption from non-profits who are trying to traditionally raise funds for their causes, right? Because that was very heavily based on, the fact that you needed, events. Of course, there are some events which are really, really strong on the in-person aspect, right? If, let's say, for example, a sporting event or something. So, of course, they are finding new ways on becoming virtual. They're finding interesting ways actually to become virtual. But traditional, knowledge conferences, they've gone virtual. Some of them started with small webinars, like 1 hour, 30 minutes, 40 minutes webinars, and now they've gone to full-fledged virtual events. So there's some sectors which are more in line, some are less. A lot of social events, for example, are going virtual as well, which is very a surprise. People are getting married now with virtual events.
Absolutely. We see that trend happening.
Yeah.
So, that brings me to the next question, Sid. I have this question. We're hearing a lot of talk about the digital twins. So that's like a new concept, and that's being talked about everywhere, especially in the event organizing industry. So they're all going about the digital twins, especially for 2021. So how does that relate to virtual events? What does digital twins mean, and how does it relate to it? What do you guys have to say about it?
That's a brilliant point. So, digital twin as a concept, Aditi, is actually, for example, in the UK, I know that there's actually a government arm which is focused on establishing digital twins for cities, for large mission critical factories, for your nuclear plants, for your energy plants. They're like a formal sector for establishing digital twin. Now, with with this pandemic and with this going on virtual, the fact that many event planners went there as resisting the change, and the moment they got in, they were totally blown away with the productivity, with the cost savings, and more than that, the ability that you can be as productive and you can do, in fact, things that are just not possible. For example, the number of meetings you can have, the number of booths you can go to, the fact that you can really engage with co-attendees in terms of roundtables, having the sort of speed networking kind of a format where you're paired with people for quick 3-minute discussions. So a lot of the things you could not even do. So, the initial talk was about hybrid events, and in a way, we already had that, with mobile apps being common. I think now there's a clear buzz in the sector that okay, digital twin is sort of another more inclusive term for hybrid. And so let's say 2021, 2022, let's take our vision forward to the next 5 years. If you're having a really important event, till last year you only had a reg form and maybe an event website. But with new technologies coming in, people are saying, oh, I'm going to use 5G now, I'm going to use VR now, and my event has to reside digitally as well, not just as a website or as a registration engine, but as an entire event. Now, what that would mean is that we would have a more inclusive audience, right? So if there are potentially 5,000 people who are, valid attendees for your event, and right now you might be having, say, less than 1,000 attending it because there's so many logistical issues. So now you're going to see
That's true.
a larger, uh, inclusiveness of events, larger participation in events, and also it's not just that that's digital. There's a lot of interplay. The digital influences how people interact in the real world, and what happens in the real world impacts what you do in the digital world. So there's a strong interplay between the two worlds, but I think definitely you're going to see that the fact that events have a digital twin will become more and more standard.
Absolutely, Sid. So, since you talked about the number of years and then, maybe the 5-year plan, so do you see hybrid events being sustained through 2025 as well?
Well, yeah, I think it's going to be pretty much, when I was talking about in May that you're going to see virtual events as the default option, some event planners were saying, oh, this is not for us, right? And so it's very clear to us that if it's an important event, you're going to increase your inclusivity. You're going to increase the digital tools that you're using. So I think the fact that the digital twin as a concept, right from cities, countries, factories, buildings, is going to percolate to events where, like right now, for example, if you talk about any sort of event, whether it's an employee engagement event, sales kickoff, it's a social event, or typically it's a customer event, you're typically looking at, you always expect that there's some form of reg, some form of web presence in terms of information. And so, yeah, I think I'm pretty sure and pretty clear the signals that we are getting that the hybrid model or the digital twin model is here to stay.
Interesting, Sid. So, tell us about the engagement part of it. So, how does the engagement happen for the digital twin or let's say hybrid events? I mean, how does it work?
Right. So some of it, Aditi, people are familiar, right? Like the mobile app had become pretty much a standard in corporate and enterprise B2B events. So when you look at,
That's right.
as an example, polling, as you can see on the screen, now the polling would be across digital and physical, right? So you're going to see that the same polling engines being used by people online as well as offline. So again, the mobile apps have a big role to play. Then moving on, you will see that the meetings, for example, the ability to have meetings between people who are attending, but also between the digital participants and the in-person participants will become more standard. So right now, if you're setting up a meeting, you generally say, okay, we'll meet in booth A or ballroom A or or this coffee shop, as an example, now it would be standard for you to say, okay, are we meeting here or are we meeting virtually? In fact, if you talk about a large event, say very large events that I have been to, like the CeBIT in Germany or South by in Austin, the famous Dreamforce of Salesforce that happens in San Francisco every year, and so on and so forth. Some of these large events where you're looking at 100,000 attendees and beyond, I think a funny play comes in where even though both may be physically present, yet they might be meeting digitally, because you might be in your hotel or you might be in another block and you might be in another building, and even though you're physically at the event, you just don't have the time to meet physically because your session is going to come up next. And so we see a very strong interplay happening, even in terms of, for example, leaderboard gamification. You're going to see that those two worlds emerge, mesh. So for example, people sitting at home or offices would be having low cost VR headsets that they can visualize and be part of the event. And at the same time, people are at the physical, they might be using, headsets which are empowered on their glasses to emerge. So I think it will not be clear to people whether you are physically there or not. So in just the way, for example, Netflix, Prime Video, and so forth, they've increased the audience share. They've increased the number of people watching online media. Whether it's movies or TV shows or documentaries, etc. What's the digital twin or the hybrid is going to do is that maximize the potential of every event. Because at the end of it, Aditi, I think every event is an investment, right? Every event, even if it's a commercial event, the organizer wants to make sure that the investment is fully realized. If it's a corporate investment, a sales kickoff, or customer appreciation event, there's always the thing of optimizing the investment and making sure it fulfills its potential. It can be what it can be. And I think the fact that a digital event can help you do that will be a big driver. And of course, things like 5G, which is right there at the corner, will further help in making sure that immersive experiences, VR experiences, really blend in. And tools such as ours, like E2M Live, for example, will provide the platform that will help drive this digital twin and hybrid as a concept. Yeah.
Very interesting, Sid. That's a great insight since you've been at the forefront of events yourself, and as you said, you've attended so many as both a speaker as well as an exhibitor. So I think that's a great tip for the event organizers as well.
Yeah,
Thanks for
absolutely.
that. So, I mean, can we safely say, Sid, that the combination of real-time engagement via video and the usage of mobile apps are the two pillars to create the digital twin? Can we say that safely?
Absolutely, absolutely. And if we can jump, I don't know, Anirban, if we can jump to the next slides, please. Um, uh, we will realize that the mobile app is sort of ground zero for people who are at the event physically, right? And of course, even at home or in the office, people are probably using the laptop or desktops, and then they're using phones as a secondary device, when they're taking a break from their devices. And of course, when you add, things like Apple TV into the mix, then that's another element. So you're going to see that while for the people who are there in person, VR glasses, virtual reality glasses, and the phone will be predominantly their channel. And for the people who are accessing it virtually, of course, their headset and their desktops or laptops would be the main channel, right? And the movie would be the secondary channel. And the fact that they would merge together, I think video would be the base for both of them. Whether if you're in person, then of course you're seeing the videos in real time, and if you're in, if you're offsite, then of course video is the key. So what you see on the screen is just one of the examples, how real panels are working. And then of course our biggest success is with roundtables. So we find that attendees love the fact that there is an element of discovery, a serendipity. So if you jump to the roundtables, you will see that people can, connect to gurus, connect to celebrities. It's like a genius bar kind of the Apple Genius Bar kind of concept, or have lunch with Warren Buffett kind of a concept where you have pre-scheduled meetings, but also when you want to just meet other attendees, either for a topic or for a sponsored table. Uh, and that's really driving the fact that the inclusivity. People are already used to the fact. So I can imagine that, let's say, in a hybrid situation, people taking a lunch break, they're having their lunch while they have three or four real persons sitting, and maybe a few seats would be reserved for virtual candidates, right? So they would see that people would be part of that either via screen or through VR. So it's amazing, how video in its different forms is driving the entire virtual slash hybrid event momentum.
Absolutely. Agreed, Sid. Absolutely. So, I mean, moving on from the engagement part of events, let's talk about the session experience now as a
Yeah,
whole.
yeah,
Because of course, sitting at home and watching a session on your screen is very different to experiencing it live, right? So
right.
there's always this gap that always is going to be there, and it's very expected. So let's talk about how and what organizers can do to bridge this gap.
Yeah, so I think the one thing is fact that no matter how digital or virtual you get, the energy that you get with people around you, that cannot be transported. And at least till 2025, we don't see that happening where energy can be converted to digital bits and transferred. So there's always an element of energy that is just vibration, from the vibe that the venue that gives it. So there's always the element, and that's important to keep the event industry alive as well. I think there's value in being physically present at an event. The energy. I would keep pointing out to the energy, and also to certain level of serendipity. There's always an element of discovering new knowledge or sessions or people that is possible digitally, but then even different kinds happen. Like you're having you're even when you're just crossing the road, for example, in an event venue in a place like South by Southwest, it's like 10 hotels that are collectively hosting the venue. So, but saying that, that's important to keep them alive because the event industry is nearly a $1 billion, $1 trillion industry now, globally, including the spend in the United States as well as in Asia, and of course the whole EMEA sector. So it's important for the physical events which are driving hotels and travel to be alive. But really, what we're talking about, Aditi, is that an event where, let's say, you would expect 500 people or 5,000 people or even 50,000 people, there's always a 5x potential. So, for example, the number of people while you might be having some 5,000 people attending a popular conference or a popular event, if there are 5,000 people attending, then the various guesstimates and the reports say that from 3x to 5x is actually the potential capacity. So which means if everybody who could come and wants to come had no issues with coming in, whether it's logistics or timing, they would be there. So 5,000 would mean anywhere from 15,000 to 25,000. That's your full potential of the event. And that's not being realized just because everybody cannot travel for so many reasons. Now, what virtual is doing is it would slightly expand the physical presence, but then it would all, because people who did attend virtually the previous one sometimes want to come in person. But we are clearly seeing that a 2x, we're already seeing the 2x, like, the events we are doing right now. When people are estimating, they said, oh, last year we had 750 people show up. They're getting easily 1,500. 2x is easy for them. We are already seeing a 2x factor because all the event planners who come to us, they make an estimate. Okay, this is the volume I'm expecting, and they're easily getting 2x. The potential of the sector is 3x to 5x depending on the kind of sector. So of course, while digital has some benefits in terms of productivity, in terms of discovery, the in-person has the benefits of energy exchange, a certain level of randomness that even technology cannot provide. So there's a blend of both. And somebody who comes in person, the next time he would be coming virtually if he cannot be there in person, and somebody who's seen it virtually would want to experience it there. So we see this positive reinforcement cycle that's going on, and which is really healthy. From roughly $1 trillion in value, the global events business. You can easily see that over the next 5 years, for example, you're seeing a net growth of 50%. That's what we are projecting, that the industry could be as much as $1.5 trillion. It's because and this whole virtuous cycle of making it a digital twin will be greatly responsible to achieve that kind of growth.
Interesting, Sid. So, and my next question, Sid, it will take you from 5x to 5G. So,
Okay.
immediately tell me, do you see any technology challenges or opportunities now with 5G? Do you think that VR is just going to be too mainstream for events, or maybe, you know, not needed? Where do you see VR coming in?
Yeah, so I think, see, today, Aditi, if you see from a home fiber perspective or the offices, you're already on to 1 Gbps kind of a connection, right? Most
Right.
countries, most states in the US, most countries like India is probably today the one of the richest in terms of bandwidth. With Geo coming in, every home is looking at minimum 100 Mbps and typically going up to 1 Gbps. Um, and of course, countries like Singapore and UK. But 5G is going to be many more times than that, right? So depending on where you are, you could be looking at 4 to 5 Gbps connections on your phone. Or so what would mean is that there would be larger inclusivity. Even now, for example, you don't really need any more bandwidth for your Netflix or for your Prime Video. You're done. Like, with 1 Gbps, you're already way ahead of the needs for you to see a movie. Anyways, we've stopped downloading movies, right? So there is no element of downloading per se. Everyone is streaming, and today I think it's
Absolutely.
fair to say that the bandwidth available is good enough for movie kind of an application. So which means that if you see Apple, the rumors are that they're going to later in October they're going to be launching the 5G phones. You're already seeing 5G getting into the political landscape where as the elections are coming in, we're already aware of all the announcements and the political issue. And things become political when it's important, right? So if 5G is not going to be really important for video, then where it's going to be important, what's going to be impacted. So now what will happen is that what 5G will do is that it will create two things. It will create inclusivity globally. So you could be in a state or in a town, in a small town, which may not have had a data rich situation. You're going to have all kinds of people from all kinds of cities and countries having rich bandwidth. So one is the inclusivity, and second is the moment you get that kind of bandwidth, applications are going to be built on top. It's always been like that, Aditi. If you see, it's never. If you see the history of computing, it's never been that you've had first the applications have come out and then the computing capacity have come out. It's never been like that. You get RAM first, you get the CPU first, you get bandwidth first, and then applications start to pop up. So virtual reality is definitely and what's holding it back is really lower cost headsets, and with innovations where you're going to have it embedded in your glasses, or the next genre of phones is going to be where you can have the virtual reality inbuilt into the phones, right? With the ability to wear your phone. So Samsung already has some of those applications. So the event industry is definitely going to be positively impacted, because then instead of just seeing a video, you can literally be moving around in the venue, and that will further increase the momentum of digital twin and virtual events.
That's actually quite an interesting inversion of the existing structure, Sid, I must say.
Mhm.
And however, I mean, I think we're still halfway through. So let's move to the next pillar of events, which is networking. So in an event where some of the audience is online and some are on site, how do they meet and interact? Is there a golden rule that you can possibly share with us?
This is good. So when you come, I think I think broadly in an event there are sort of two pillars for success, right? One is the knowledge piece. What are you learning, right? And so there's an element of discovery in terms of what session should I go for, and then there is an element of whom do I meet? Do I meet any new people? Do I meet new people that spark a next level of conversation, or where I can learn something? I have seen that, as a literally an event junkie, I have met people, I have been to sessions where one thing, just one thing that I learned or heard was very impactful in some project that we were doing, or it helped in totally changing sometimes, when it comes to fitness or when it comes to management styles. You know, like for example, Google is famous. It says every Monday morning they have their management meeting. As an example, or so for a startup which is trying to understand, okay, how do I set my leadership practice in place? Getting one tip on hiring, getting one tip on how do you establish innovation more broadly speaking. How do you improve your QA process? There's so many things. I've learned amazing things. So this has only become, and I had not planned those. It is an element of serendipity, discovery. So coming to your question, Aditi, one is of course what we have is the hosted by me, which is a traditional format where vendors pay to have pre-assigned meetings. So that's one. The other very popular is the one-to-one meetings, where you have attendees requesting meetings from other people, and then they actually meet on the platform or physically during the event. The third is, of course, what you're seeing is the roundtables, where you go into a roundtable, you have a video call with 6 to 7 people. You can go up to 12 as well. Uh, People you've never met before, but they are of your interest area. It is actually very, very surreal and very exciting actually to do a video call with people where you did not know who's going to be on the call. You see, at the moment when you do a video call, you largely know who you're going to speak to, but here you don't know whom you're going to meet. And after having been part of so many roundtables, it's really exciting to see that momentum happen. And then there are specialized ways of networking, like the traditional social concept of speed dating. You have the equivalent of speed networking, where you meet people from anywhere from 3 minutes to 5 minutes, where based on your interest groups, you're randomly matched. And then, of course, you have the gamification piece, like trivia, like the equivalent of treasure hunt, where you're paired with a team or a partner, and then you achieve goals together. And that's another level of networking. So all of these, dependent on whether it's an employee event, it's a customer event, it's a social event, you know, engagement is really key. You don't want to see a movie. You just don't want something to be one way. And in fact, just after this session, what we'll be going to do is we'll have a quick slow Q&A, but we'll really move on to the roundtables where the attendees can experience the fact that they are being, they can select a roundtable, be part of a roundtable, and see how it moves. So that's really key.
Great. Sid, I want to go back a bit. I mean, I want to go back and ask you, with all this digital and 5G in place, why are events going to be relevant at all in 2025?
That's a good point, Aditi. Yeah, I mean, when you have all the technology of Facebook and when you have all the technology of digital, why would events be
Exactly.
important? Why cannot be 100% virtual, for example, and why do you need events in the first place? So let's break that question into sort of two or three parts. So number one is, why is it important to meet in person? I think if you see the usage of paper, for example, the more digital the world has been, the usage of paper has actually increased. So what happens is that the more you have digital, the more connections are made, and hence there are more meetings. And what we discussed very briefly, Aditi, is that you cannot replicate energy transfer. You cannot replace the vibe of a conference hall. There's the smell of a Regis or a Ritz Carlton or a Centennial, of a Moscone center. You cannot replicate those. So there is an element where you have business and pleasure mixing. You are traveling. You're seeing new sights and sounds and new places. So that's going to be a very big driver for physical events. If you want to do an offsite, for example, for an employee, you don't want to do it on platforms like E2M or any other platform all the time. You need to travel. Now, why do you need event in the first place? Is because I think, like, if you see any company, whether it's Apple trying to launch their products from iPhones to others, or it's a solo company, or it's a government, I think events sort of focus and channelize energy. Again, we're coming back to the whole energy theme again. But yes, events are energy. I think they do focus people to act in a specific amount of time, in a specific uh, section of time, which is not, on demand is not always required. You need to know that it's happening then. It makes people also achieve. It is also a milestone, a goalpost. I think engineers or factory workers, they know that this is the product launch date. We're going to have this event, and they move backwards and go towards that. So events have always been a signpost to achieve things, or to award people on achieving things. So events as a concept will always be around because they drive performance, they drive a sense of urgency, uh, and a specific point is why physical events should be alive and grow. Not only alive and grow. I know a lot of people are probably thinking, "Oh my God, when this will start?" But I think if you see a 5-year horizon, it's not only going to start; it's going to grow. But the overall industry is going to grow even further, and that's because energy in terms of the whole, the vibe, the atmosphere, you cannot, that's very important for mental health, that's very important for the excitement, it's very important for so many of these reasons, for both event as a concept to survive and the event in person as a concept to survive. And yes, it will grow because now you're going to have the digital twin. So you're going into this virtuous cycle of in person helping in the virtual, and the virtual helping back to the in person, going into a positive spin on a constant basis.
I think that's a great way to put it, Sid, and I'm very sure this is all coming from your own experience at multiple events. So thanks for that.
No problem.
So now, Sid, we've discussed engagement, we've discussed sessions, we've discussed networking as well. So let's touch upon the expo part of it, the trade show. So for many events, we've seen that the integral part of any event, it has to be the expo. It's for the
Yeah,
sponsors, the exhibitors, the people that bring on board their experiences and their products and services. So naturally, in a hybrid event, the sponsors would want their access, to the complete audience, both online and offline. So how can we make that possible for them? How can we make their journey, their experience on the platform
yeah,
comfortable, easy, and at the same time enriching, so that they have all the information they need, be it online or offline?
absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, so uh, let me, Expo, I think, is not only a form of funding a particular event, especially commercial events, but even for non-commercial events, I think it's a great way, a focused way for attendees to find what they're looking for. I mean, there are so many events globally which are expo only. I mean, some of the largest ones that happen in China, in Taiwan, in the US, for example, in Chicago, you will in Vegas, of course, the mothership of events. I mean, I think expo is so ingrained. Now, when you take it virtual, now what are the? Of course, what you don't want is, you just don't want it to be like a website where you can download information, because I think the website as a concept has already done that to a large degree, right? So if you're going to have, we sometimes see some platforms just giving a listing of exhibitors or maybe just a logo. That's nice, but that's not going to cut it. So what we've seen is, if you show, maybe I can show you a few examples of how an expo might look like if we go
Sure.
forward. Yeah, so this is just one example. For example, yeah, this one is is one example of making sure that it looks and feels like a real expo. So it would be great, that what's in the real life is what here, but the one thing that takes it next step forward, Aditi, for example, is we have this concept called exchange a business card. So when you go to a booth, a typical format is you try and collect all the information in the form of brochures or maybe a pen drive or maybe links and a bag and some swag. You get free stuff, and then you potentially exchange business cards and you move on. So now if you see here on the top where you see the exchange business card, that's a massive. In fact, we are so surprised. So just to give you numbers, like for example, if you have, we are seeing 1.5x the number of business cards being exchanged. So what it means is that, let's say if an event has 10,000 attendees, we are seeing at least 15,000 business cards being exchanged, which is phenomenal. you know and this is where you exchange your data and you get a copy of all the collateral, and it's a sure sign for the exhibitor to make sure that the attendees are interested. And with connections to your Salesforce and other CRM systems and marketing automation systems, it sets the pipeline. B, lower to that, what you can see is actually the video room, the equivalent to a breakout room, video breakout room. So this is the same thing as having a conversation. In fact, the constant feedback we are getting is the moment you can speak to, you can not only speak to the booth staff, but you might have co-attendees in that room where you are saying, oh, you're looking for that, I'm looking for this. And it's a nice, healthy conversation which can then be jumped off to a one-to-one or scheduled for a further follow-up. So these two things, exchange business card and having the video room, is really bringing that whole element. And we see that constantly growing. So if you see that from a 5-year horizon, you will see things like people being able to travel and walk through, literally walk through using their headsets, and vice versa. Because right, if you go to a large trade show, if you're going to have something like CES or something where you have, let's say, 3,000 booths, it's impossible for you to be able to go to every booth. It's literally impossible. So the fact that you can visit maybe, say, 100 booths, but then you can sit in lunchtime or in the evening and then visit other booths that you could have never got access to, speak to their exhibitors, grab their collateral, whether it's a video or PDF. It's the same thing, it increases inclusivity. Delivering the full potential of events gives more ROI to the event planners, to the exhibitors, and makes it more fruitful for the attendees. So, this whole 3D concept of exhibiting with video and exchange business card, I think probably the most fundamental way expos are being transformed today.
That is a very interesting approach that you have to the system, Sid, I must say. So let's say an on-site guest who's at the event, who's at the hotel, who's regularly visiting the event, that person may want to check out a virtual booth. So because it's easier for them to quickly check out a virtual booth.
Yeah.
So I mean, how does this work? I mean, this also provides another layer of accessibility to even the attendees, for that matter.
Sorry, what did you mean, Aditi, with that? Just could you help me understand that again?
So what I was saying, Sid, is firstly, when a person is on site, when a guest is on site, that person may want to check out a virtual booth. He may want to probably just run through all the virtual booths that are there at the event. So this, I think, we all think that it provides another layer to accessibility as a general whole to all attendees. So do you think that that is something that resonates with E2M on air as well?
Yes, E2M gives you, of course, we don't want to be too salesy here, but E2M gives the complete platform. So we have like over 12 different templates which can be chosen by exhibitors. And then once they are selected, they are deployed, and then they're put there. Exhibitors can upload their collateral, their booth staff details, and E2M provides an out-of-the-box solution to implement a virtual expo. And these can be a virtual expo. It could be a virtual job fair, for example, a career fair. It could be, for one large company, it could be different divisions or different products. So each product could have one booth. So,
Sure.
for example, we have some companies who are running a constant virtual booth across the year, and the different booths represent the different divisions. So for, let's say, large companies who have many product lines and many divisions, it's a company-owned virtual pavilion, but it then gives you access to each one of that, and it's far more engaging and real time than say what a traditional website kind of a thing what can give. So at the end of the day, it increases inclusivity, it gives more ROI to the exhibitors.
Absolutely, Sid. And the fact that you also have the possibility of plugging in the custom booths as well. I think that's a great way of doing it.
Yeah.
Now, okay, now since we are nearing the end of today's discussion, Sid, so do you have any tip for the organizers or any brands that are planning their 2020 end of 2020 events or probably the 2021 calendar event?
So I'm going to be slightly, talking about, in it might be construed that I'm trying to promote, I'm having a bias towards this, but I would say that do not delay. So if you go to the next slide for this, I would say that there is no matter what your event is, you don't need to delay your event anymore because first-hand experience, the event planners are getting all their goals delivered. You know, they're getting their events. If you had an event that was not done this year, please do it this year. The virtual technology is so advanced, they're giving an ROI which is significantly higher. So there's no reason absolutely to delay. So do it virtually this year. Plan for a digital twin next year, and then take digital twin as a key strategy to build inclusivity. And digital twin does not imply that you just have some digital polling or something like that. It has to be literally a digital twin. So you get the entire video of the sessions. You can have the entire experience with the expo flow. You can meet people. Everything that you can do in the real life, you can do digitally and vice versa. I think companies who understand events bringing an ROI, companies that understand, events, beyond registration, for example, get into the digital twin space. Do your virtual event this year. Don't let this, because this is a gold mine. People are so attentive. You know, if this year you're doing an event, you will get the required attendees and go for it. Second is, what I would recommend is use AI tools for marketing automation, for reach out, for example, for automating, whether it's fundraising, for example, whether it's using it for gamification, whether it's for selling tickets, reaching out. Use conversation automation tools. One of them is Zoe that we sell, but there's several others. Just don't do a virtual event, but also automate things. Use marketing automation, because I think this year is the time when you set these things in place. You're saving time in terms of traveling, etc., that you were doing constantly in the year before and previously. So with the time saved, do your virtual events, but at the same time, every time I think a lot of event planners are postponing automation and use of AI. This is the time to not only do those virtual events but deploy AI to automate. When you talk about using AI, it's automation. And the fact that virtual will increase your attendee pool, automation will ensure that you get a larger attendee pool as well. The combined will be a phenomenal. It'll just change the course of your KPIs that you're looking at with events.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, guys, I think that's it for today. We've almost crossed the time, and it's always very interesting talking about how digital events and how digital twins, I should say, work out now. So, thank you so much for joining us, everyone, and we hope that we've been able to answer most of your questions. And if you have any questions relating to hybrid events, feel free to drop a line.
Yeah, so we'll just
And
be moving to the Q&A.
yeah. So we'll
And
just be
then
moving to the roundtable. Yes. So, guys, if you have any questions for Sid, he'll be on the roundtable for you. And just pour in your questions, and we'll get back. Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Thank you, Sid.
Bye.
Thank you for
See you.
joining. Bye bye.